They say you can't save someone who's already been thrown away. Jack Monroe was about to prove that wrong. On a frozen country road at dawn, a struggling single father found what looked like discarded trash in a ditch. But trash doesn't bleed. Trash doesn't whisper betrayed with its last breath. The broken woman he carried 3 miles through the cold wasn't just fighting for her life. She was fighting against the people who were supposed to love her. This is their story. Stay with me until the end and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story has traveled. The fog came in thick that November morning, the kind that swallowed everything whole and gave nothing back. Jack Monroe's pickup truck rattled down County Road 47 like a dying animal, all coughs and wheezes held together by rust and prayer. The heater had quit working 2 winters ago, so he drove with his jacket zipped to his throat and his hands wrapped in electrical tape where his gloves had worn through. He was heading to the Kellerman place 15 miles outside of Millbrook to fix a busted water heater for $40 cash. It wasn't much, but $40 meant groceries for 3 days. Maybe 4 if he was careful. Maybe 5 if Maddie didn't ask for the cereal with the cartoon character on the box. Maddie. 6 years old, brown curls that never stayed in their ponytail. Gap-toothed smile that could break your heart and put it back together in the same breath. She was still asleep when he'd left at 5:30, wrapped in the quilt her mother had made before the cancer took her. That quilt was one of the last good things in their house, and Jack made sure it stayed clean. The road curved ahead, and Jack eased off the gas. The fog was soupy here, turning the world into a gray watercolor painting with no edges. His headlights carved 2 weak tunnels through the murk, illuminating nothing but more gray, more cold, more emptiness. That's when he saw it. Something dark in the ditch, large, shapeless. Probably a deer, he thought, or a bag of garbage someone had dumped. People did that out here, throwing their trash into the countryside like it was one big landfill. He'd found everything from mattresses to refrigerators rotting in these ditches. But something made him slow down. Something made him pull over. Jack cut the engine and climbed out. The cold hit him like a slap, and the fog pressed close, dampening his jacket, his hair, his eyelashes. He could hear his own breathing, loud and ragged in the silence. Probably nothing, he muttered, but his boots were already carrying him forward, crunching through frost-brittle grass. The shape was about 20 feet down the slope. Dark fabric. No, not fabric. A jacket. Expensive looking, even from here. And beneath it, Jack's heart stopped. A hand. Pale fingers curled against the mud. Jesus Christ. He was running before he knew he'd started, half sliding down the embankment, his boots losing traction on the wet earth. He hit his knees beside the figure and his hands were already moving, checking for a pulse, for breathing, for any sign of life. It was a woman. Young, maybe 30. Her face was a canvas of violence, split lip, swollen eye, blood matted in her dark hair. Her skin was gray with cold, and when Jack pressed 2 fingers to her throat, he felt the faintest flutter of a heartbeat. Hey, can you hear me? No response. That's when he saw the wheelchair. It was overturned 5 feet away, one wheel still spinning slowly in the wind. Tracks in the mud showed where it had been pushed, where it had tipped, where she'd fallen, or been thrown. Jack's mind raced. She was paralyzed. She'd been in that chair. Someone had brought her out here and... "Who did this to you?" he whispered, even though she couldn't answer. He pulled out his phone. No signal. Of course not. Out here, cell service was a fantasy. The nearest house was his own, 3 miles back. The Kellerman place was another 12 miles ahead. The hospital was in Millbrook, 25 miles of winding country roads. She didn't have that kind of time. Jack made a decision. He slid his arms beneath her carefully, one under her shoulders, one under her knees. She was lighter than he'd expected, all sharp angles and hollow spaces. He lifted her against his chest, and her head lolled against his shoulder. "I've got you," he said. "I've got you. You're going to be okay." He didn't know if he was lying. The climb back up to the road was brutal. His boots kept slipping, and twice he nearly fell, catching himself only by slamming his shoulder into the embankment. The woman didn't make a sound. She hung limp in his arms like something already dead, and Jack had to keep checking to make sure she was still breathing. At the truck, he realized he had a problem. The passenger side was full of tools, wire, and the remnants of last week's fast food dinners. He couldn't lay her down there. The truck bed was even worse. Frozen metal, no shelter. Damn it! He ended up placing her as gently as he could across the front seat, her head in his lap, his right hand pressed to her throat to monitor her pulse while he drove one-handed. The truck protested when he started it, but the engine caught, and Jack swung onto the road. He drove like a man possessed, 40, 50, 60 miles per hour on roads that begged for 25. The truck shuddered and groaned. The fog refused to lift, and the woman in his lap didn't move. "Stay with me," Jack said. He didn't know if she could hear him, but he kept talking anyway. "My name's Jack Monroe. You're safe now. Nobody's going to hurt you. I'm taking you home, and then we're getting you to a hospital. Just stay with me, please." Her lips moved. Jack almost missed it, but he felt the flutter of breath against his wrist, saw the faint tremor in her mouth. "What? What did you say?" She tried again, and this time he heard it. One word, barely audible, shaped by broken lips and carried on the thinnest thread of air. "Betrayed." Then her eyes closed, and she went completely still. Jack's farmhouse was a testament to survival, not success. The paint had peeled away years ago, leaving bare wood that had weathered to the color of old bones. The porch sagged on one side, and half the shutters hung crooked. But it was home. It was shelter. And right now, it was the closest thing to salvation he could offer. He carried the woman inside, kicking the door open with his boot. The house was cold. He'd let the fire die before leaving, and dark. Morning light struggled through dirty windows, turning everything gray and uncertain. "Maddie!" His voice cracked. "Maddie, I need you!" Footsteps thundered down the stairs, and then she was there in her pajamas, all curls and confusion, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Daddy? What?" She saw the woman in his arms and froze. "Is she dead?" No, baby, she's alive, but she's hurt real bad. I need you to do something for me, okay? Something really important." Maddie nodded, her eyes huge. "Go to the kitchen. Get every clean towel we have and bring me the first aid kit from under the bathroom sink. Can you do that?" "Yes, Daddy." She ran and Jack carried the woman to the couch. It was ancient, the cushions held together with duct tape, but it was soft. He laid her down carefully, arranging her limbs, pushing her hair back from her face. The damage was worse in the light. Her left eye was swollen completely shut. Blood had dried in a crust along her temple. Her hands were scraped raw, like she'd tried to fight, tried to crawl, tried to do something. Maddie returned with an armful of towels and the dented metal first aid kit. "Is this enough?" "Perfect, baby, perfect." Jack grabbed the towels and pressed one gently against the worst of the head wound. "Now I need you to get me the phone. Not my cell, the landline. It's in the kitchen." While Maddie ran for the phone, Jack worked quickly. He checked the woman's pupils, uneven, not good. He felt along her arms, her ribs, checking for breaks. Everything seemed intact, but she was so cold. Hypothermia cold. He grabbed the quilt from the back of the couch, Maddie's quilt, Sarah's quilt, and tucked it around her. Maddie appeared with the cordless phone, and Jack grabbed it, punching in 911. 3 rings, 4, 5. 911, what's your emergency? "I found a woman on County Road 47. She's been beaten. She's unconscious. I need an ambulance at 1247 Hickory Lane immediately." "Sir, can you tell me her condition?" "Pulse is weak, breathing shallow, multiple contusions to the face and head. She's hypothermic, and she's paralyzed. I found a wheelchair at the scene." "Paralyzed?" The dispatcher's tone sharpened. "Sir, did you move her?" "I had to. She was in a ditch, no cell service. I had no choice." Okay, sir, stay calm. Ambulance is on the way. Can you tell me how long?" 20 minutes. "Sir, I need you to, 20 minutes. Okay. Jack hung up. 20 minutes. In that time, she could die. In that time, whoever did this could be miles away. In that time, her eyes opened. It was sudden, like someone had flipped a switch. One moment she was gone, and the next she was staring at him with her one good eye, dark and dilated and full of terror. "Don't move," Jack said quickly, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're safe. You're in my house. I found you on the road. An ambulance is coming. She tried to speak, but only a rasp came out. Water, Jack said. Maddie, can you? But Maddie was already there with a glass, and Jack held it to the woman's lips, letting her sip. Most of it dribbled down her chin, but some made it down her throat. Thank you, the woman whispered. Her voice was like gravel, like broken glass. Thank you for... She stopped, wincing. Where's my chair? Still at the scene. I couldn't carry both. She closed her eyes and a single tear traced down her bruised cheek. They tried to kill me. The words hung in the air, heavy and terrible. Maddie's small hand found Jack's. Daddy, who would hurt her? I don't know, baby. But the woman heard. Her eye opened again, focusing on Maddie with an intensity that was almost frightening. People you trust, she said. People who are supposed to love you. Jack felt something cold settle in his stomach. Who did this to you? My sister. The woman's voice cracked. My half-sister. And the board, they... She coughed, and blood flecked her lips. They voted me out, took my company, and when I fought back, they... Another cough, weaker. They decided a dead CEO was better than a fighting one. Jesus. I'm Evelyn. She was fading now, her eyes starting to glaze. Evelyn Crosswell, if I don't make it, you're going to make it. If I don't, tell the police. Tell them it was Victoria, my sister. The sound of sirens cut through the air, faint but growing stronger. Hear that? Jack squeezed her hand. That's your ride. You're going to make it, Evelyn. You're going to make it, and you're going to make them pay. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. You're the first person in years who looked at me and saw a person, not a disability, not a problem, just... Her eye closed. Thank you. The sirens were louder now, right outside. Daddy? Maddie tugged his sleeve. Will she really be okay? Jack looked down at this woman, this stranger who'd been thrown away like garbage, who'd been betrayed by the people closest to her, who'd whispered her secrets to a broke single father on a dying couch in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, baby, he said, even though he didn't know, even though he couldn't promise. She's going to be fine. The paramedics burst through the door, and Jack stepped back, letting them work. They moved with practiced efficiency, checking vitals, starting an IV, asking rapid-fire questions that Jack answered as best he could. Within minutes, they had Evelyn on a stretcher, wrapped in silver warming blankets, an oxygen mask over her face. Sir, we need you to come with us, one of the paramedics said. The police will want a statement. Jack looked at Maddie, then back at the paramedic. I have my daughter. Bring her. We'll figure it out at the hospital. So Jack scooped Maddie into his arms, grabbed his keys, and followed the stretcher out into the cold morning. The ambulance lights painted the fog red and blue, and neighbors he hadn't seen in months were starting to emerge from their houses, drawn by the commotion. As they loaded Evelyn into the ambulance, her eye opened one more time, finding Jack's face in the crowd. She mouthed 2 words. Thank you. Then the doors closed, and she was gone. Millbrook General Hospital smelled like disinfectant and desperation. Jack sat in the waiting room with Maddie curled against his side, her head on his shoulder, her hand clutching the fabric of his jacket. They'd been there for 3 hours. 3 hours of bad coffee, fluorescent lights, and the low murmur of other people's emergencies. The police had arrived an hour ago. 2 detectives, one older, one younger, both wearing the kind of tired expressions that came from seeing too much. They'd taken Jack to a small consultation room and asked him to recount everything. He told them about the fog, the shape in the ditch, the wheelchair, the blood. He told them what Evelyn had said. Betrayed, my sister, Victoria, the board. He told them about the 20-minute drive, the call to 911, the moment her eye had opened. The older detective, a woman named Martinez, had written it all down in a battered notebook. Mr. Monroe, do you know who Evelyn Crosswell is? She told me her name. That's all. Martinez and her partner exchanged a look. Evelyn Crosswell is the founder and CEO, former CEO, of Crosswell Biotech, one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the Midwest. She's worth about $200 million. Jack stared. What? 3 weeks ago, her half-sister Victoria and the board of directors voted her out in an emergency session. They claimed she was mentally unfit to lead due to her disability and recent erratic behavior. Evelyn fought it, filed lawsuits, made a lot of noise. Martinez leaned forward. 2 days ago, she disappeared. No one's seen her since. The younger detective Rodriguez chimed in. We thought it was a voluntary disappearance, that she'd taken off to regroup, but what you're describing sounds like attempted murder, Martinez finished. And if her own sister did this, we're looking at something very ugly. Jack felt sick. She said they tried to kill her. She said a dead CEO was better than a fighting one. That tracks. Martinez closed her notebook. Mr. Monroe, you saved her life today. If you hadn't found her when you did, she'd be dead in that ditch by nightfall. Jack didn't know what to say to that. He'd just been driving to a job, just trying to make $40. He hadn't set out to be anyone's hero. What happens now? He asked. Now we investigate. We bring Victoria Crosswell and the board members in for questioning. We search properties, pull phone records, build a case. Martinez stood. And we keep Evelyn alive long enough to testify. Is she going to make it? Doctors say she's stable. Severe hypothermia, concussion, bruised ribs, lacerations. She'll recover physically. Mentally? Martinez shrugged. That's harder to predict. Someone tried to kill her and left her for dead. That does things to a person. Jack thought about Sarah, about the cancer, about watching her slip away day by day. Yeah, he said quietly. It does. They let him see her around noon. Evelyn was in the ICU, hooked up to machines that beeped and hummed, fluids dripping into her veins through clear tubes. Her face was even worse under the hospital lights, purple and yellow bruises, stitches along her hairline, that swollen eye now properly bandaged. But she was awake. Mr. Monroe? Her voice was stronger now, though still rough. They told me you stayed. Didn't seem right to leave. Jack stood awkwardly by the door, suddenly aware of how he must look. Dirty jacket, taped up hands, boots still caked with mud. How are you feeling? Like I got thrown in a ditch and left to die. She smiled weakly. But alive. Because of you. You would have done the same. Would I? Evelyn studied him with her good eye. I'd like to think so. But before this, I don't know if I would have stopped. I spent so much time in boardrooms and laboratories, I forgot what it meant to just see people, really see them. Jack shifted his weight. The police told me who you are. What you do. Does it change anything? Should it? Evelyn laughed, then winced. Most people treat me differently when they know I'm wealthy. Like I'm made of glass or gold. I'm not sure which. You're made of the same stuff as everyone else, Jack said. You just happen to have more money. And fewer working legs. The bluntness surprised him. That too. Do you know why they did it? Evelyn's voice dropped. Why Victoria and the board tried to kill me? The detective said something about a vote, about them claiming you were unfit. I wasn't unfit. I was inconvenient. Evelyn's hand curled into a fist on the blanket. After the accident that paralyzed me, I changed the company's focus. We'd been developing luxury pharmaceuticals, expensive drugs for wealthy patients. I redirected everything toward accessibility, generic medications, sliding scale pricing, research into treatments for rare diseases that wouldn't turn a profit. That sounds like a good thing. It was the right thing, but it wasn't profitable. Victoria and the board saw their dividends shrinking, their stock options losing value. So they manufactured a crisis. They had doctors sign affidavits saying I was depressed, unstable, making irrational decisions because of my disability. Her voice hardened. And when I fought back, when I hired lawyers and gathered evidence of their embezzlement, they decided to solve the problem permanently. They left you to die, Jack said. They drove me 20 miles out of the city, dumped me in the middle of nowhere, and figured the cold would do the rest. No witnesses, no evidence, just a tragic case of a disabled woman who wandered off and couldn't find her way home. She looked at him. If you hadn't come along... But I did. Why? Evelyn's eye was intense. You don't know me. I'm just a stranger. Why risk yourself? Why bring me to your home? Why stay? Jack thought about it. About Maddie asleep in the waiting room. About Sarah's quilt wrapped around a dying woman. About the fact that he'd been so close to just driving past, to dismissing what he'd seen as trash, as not his problem. Because you needed help, he said finally. And I had the means to give it. That's all. That's all, Evelyn echoed. Do you know how rare that is? To help someone just because they need it, expecting nothing in return? I didn't do it for thanks. I know, that's why it matters. She reached out with one hand, and after a moment, Jack took it. Her grip was weak but steady. When I get out of here, when I get my company back and my life back, I want to repay you. Please, let me. You don't owe me anything. Yes, I do. You gave me my life back. Her eyes started to close, exhaustion winning. And that's a debt I'll never be able to fully repay. But I'd like to try. Jack squeezed her hand once, then let go. Get some rest, Ms. Crosswell. We can talk about debts later. Evelyn, she murmured, already half asleep. Call me Evelyn. Get some rest, Evelyn. He was at the door when she spoke again, so quiet he almost missed it. You were the first person to see me as human, not broken, not disabled, not a liability, just human. Jack looked back, but her eye was closed, her breathing already evening out into sleep. He left her there, surrounded by machines and monitors, and wondered if she had any idea what she'd just said. Wondered if she knew that he'd been thinking the same thing about her, that she'd looked at him, at his worn-out life and his makeshift solutions, and his daughter raised on duct-tape budgets, and hadn't seen failure. She'd seen a person, someone worth saving. Outside in the parking lot, the fog had finally lifted. Thin sunlight broke through the clouds, painting the world in shades of gold and amber. Jack leaned against his truck and closed his eyes, feeling the warmth on his face. Maddie was asleep in the waiting room, curled up on 3 chairs pushed together, still wrapped in her jacket. The nurses had given her crackers and apple juice and let her watch cartoons on the ancient TV mounted in the corner. Jack would wake her soon, would drive them home, would try to salvage what was left of the day, maybe still make it to the Kellerman place if they were understanding about the delay. But for now, he just stood there in the sunlight, thinking about a woman named Evelyn Crosswell who'd whispered betrayed with her last breath and thank you with her first. Thinking about how sometimes you go looking for $40 and find something worth infinitely more. Like purpose, like meaning, like the quiet, unexpected knowledge that you'd done something right in a world that felt increasingly wrong. His phone buzzed, a text from a number he didn't recognize. This is Detective Martinez. Thought you'd want to know. We picked up Victoria Crosswell an hour ago. She was at the airport trying to board a flight to Brazil. She's in custody. The others will follow. Thank you for your statement. You gave us the break we needed. Jack read it twice, then looked up at the hospital. At the building where Evelyn lay sleeping, battered but alive, broken but fighting. You're welcome, he said to the sky, to the woman who couldn't hear him, to the universe that had put him on County Road 47 at exactly the right moment. Then he pushed off the truck, went inside, scooped his daughter into his arms, and carried her home. Not knowing that this was just the beginning, not knowing that the woman he'd saved would soon save him back, not knowing that betrayal and redemption were 2 sides of the same coin, and that sometimes you had to lose everything to find what truly mattered. But he'd learn. They both would. Together. The days that followed moved like water through cupped hands, present one moment, gone the next, leaving only the memory of something vital slipping away. Jack returned to his routines because routines were all he had. He fixed the Kellerman's water heater 2 days late and accepted $30 instead of $40 without complaint. He patched the leak in Maddie's bedroom ceiling with salvaged plywood and sealant borrowed from a neighbor. He made dinners of rice and beans, stretching every dollar until it screamed. But everything felt different now, changed, like someone had adjusted the color saturation on his life and he was seeing shades he'd forgotten existed. Maddie noticed. She was 6, but 6-year-olds saw more than people gave them credit for. She watched him from across the dinner table, her spoon hovering over her bowl, her eyes too knowing for someone who still believed in the tooth fairy. "Are you thinking about the broken lady?" she asked one evening, her voice cutting through the quiet like a bell. Jack looked up from his own untouched food. Her name's Evelyn. Is she still in the hospital? I think so, yeah. Are we going to see her again? Jack set down his spoon. I don't know, baby. She's got her own life, important things to deal with. We helped her, and that's good. But now she needs to heal and... Daddy, you're doing it again. Doing what? Making yourself small. Maddie said it matter-of-factly, like she was commenting on the weather. Mama used to say that. She said you made yourself small so other people could be big. The words hit Jack like a physical blow. Sarah had said that near the end when the morphine made her honest in ways that broke his heart. You're allowed to take up space, Jack. You're allowed to matter. He dismissed it then, too focused on keeping her comfortable, on managing pain medications and doctor's appointments, and the crushing weight of watching her die by inches. But hearing it now in his daughter's voice, in this kitchen that smelled like beans and old wood, I'm not making myself small, he said, but the words felt hollow even as he spoke them. Yes, you are. You think she's too important for us, but she's not. She's just a person. You said so. Jack stared at his daughter, this small creature who'd inherited her mother's wisdom and her father's stubbornness, and felt something crack open in his chest. When did you get so smart? I was always smart. You just forget to notice. Maddie grinned, gap-toothed and brilliant. Can we bring her flowers when we visit her? We're not... Daddy. Maddie. They stared at each other across the table, and Jack saw Sarah in her eyes, Sarah's determination, Sarah's absolute refusal to let him hide from things that mattered. Okay, he said finally. Okay, we'll go see her, but just to check how she's doing, don't expect... The knock on the door interrupted him. It was 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night. Nobody knocked on Jack Monroe's door at 8 o'clock on a Wednesday night. Nobody knocked on Jack Monroe's door at all, unless they were lost or selling something. Jack stood slowly, instinct prickling at the base of his skull. He moved to the door and peered through the warped glass panel. A woman stood on his porch, mid-40s, expensive coat, leather briefcase. Behind her, a black sedan idled in his driveway, its headlights cutting through the darkness. He opened the door halfway. Can I help you? Mr. Jack Monroe? The woman's voice was crisp, professional, with the kind of polish that came from boardrooms and law schools. Depends on who's asking. My name is Patricia Chen. I'm an attorney representing Evelyn Crosswell. She extended a business card through the gap. May I come in? I have a message from Ms. Crosswell, and it's rather urgent. Jack took the card but didn't move. Is she okay? Did something happen? She's fine, recovering well actually, but she's asked me to speak with you about a sensitive matter, and I'd prefer not to do it on your porch. Patricia glanced over her shoulder at the idling car. I promise, Mr. Monroe, I'm not here to cause trouble. Quite the opposite. Something in her tone convinced him. Jack stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in, but my daughter's here, so... I understand completely. Patricia entered, taking in the shabby interior with the practiced neutrality of someone who'd learned not to judge. Her eyes lingered on Maddie, who was watching from the kitchen doorway with open curiosity. Hello there. You must be Maddie. How do you know my name? Your father mentioned you to my client. She speaks very highly of you both. Maddie beamed, and Jack felt that crack in his chest widen a little more. Patricia set her briefcase on the coffee table and opened it with precise movements. Mr. Monroe, as you know, Evelyn Crosswell was the victim of an attempted murder. Thanks to your intervention and your statement to police, we've been able to build a substantial case against Victoria Crosswell and 3 members of the Crosswell Biotech Board of Directors. The detectives told me they made arrests. They did. Victoria's in custody, denied bail. The others are out on bond but heavily monitored. Patricia pulled out a folder. However, we have a problem. Evelyn's been receiving threats. Someone's been calling the hospital, leaving messages. Nothing specific enough to trace, but the implication is clear. There are other people who want her silenced permanently. Jack's hands curled into fists. What kind of messages? Finish what we started. You should have stayed in the ditch. Things of that nature. Patricia's expression was grim. The police have assigned protection, but Evelyn doesn't feel safe in the hospital. Too many access points, too many people coming and going. She's requested a discharge. Requested? Can she do that? She's still recovering. She's lucid and of sound mind. She can refuse treatment if she chooses. And she's chosen. Patricia leaned forward. Which brings me to why I'm here. Evelyn needs somewhere to recover, somewhere private, somewhere no one would think to look. The implication settled over Jack like snow. No, absolutely not. Mr. Monroe, I have a 6-year-old daughter. If someone's threatening Evelyn, if there are people out there who want her dead, I can't bring that danger to my home. I won't. I understand your concern. I do. But consider this. Whoever's making these threats assumes Evelyn will go to a safe house, or a private facility, or perhaps a friend's estate. They'll be watching those places. They won't be watching a small farmhouse in the middle of nowhere owned by a man she met less than a week ago. That's insane. That's exactly why it'll work. Patricia pulled out another document. Evelyn's willing to compensate you generously. $50,000 for 2 weeks. That's nearly $4,000 a day. She'll bring her own medical equipment, her own nursing staff. All you have to provide is the space. Jack's brain stuttered. $50,000. That was more money than he'd made in the last 2 years combined. That was Maddie's education. That was a new roof. That was breathing room, real breathing room, for the first time since Sarah died. Why me? He asked. She doesn't know me. I don't know her. Why would she trust me with her safety? Patricia's expression softened. She said you carried her 3 miles through the cold when you could have left her. She said you gave her your daughter's blanket. She said you looked at her and saw a person, not a problem. She paused. She trusts you, Mr. Monroe, because you've already proven you're trustworthy. And right now, that's a very rare commodity in her world. Jack looked at Maddie, who was listening to every word with wide eyes. He thought about Sarah's quilt wrapped around a dying woman. He thought about the word betrayed whispered in the fog. He thought about Detective Martinez saying, "You saved her life today." "I need to talk to my daughter," he said finally. "Alone." Patricia nodded and stood. "I'll wait in the car. Take your time." After she left, Jack knelt in front of Maddie and took her small hands in his taped-up ones. "Baby, this is a big decision. If we say yes, a stranger is going to come live with us for 2 weeks. Someone who's in danger. Someone people might be looking for. The broken lady, Evelyn." "Right. And I need to know if you're okay with that. Because if you're not, if you're scared or uncomfortable, we say no. Your safety is more important than anything else." Maddie chewed her bottom lip, thinking hard. "Will she be nice to us?" "I think so." "Will bad people come here?" "The lawyer says no. Says they won't even know to look here. But I can't promise that. I can't promise anything." "Daddy, when Mama was sick, lots of people came to help us. Mrs. Kellerman brought us food. Mr. Rodriguez fixed our car for free. The church paid for Mama's medicine." Maddie squeezed his hands. "Maybe it's our turn to help someone, even if it's scary." Jack pulled her into a hug, breathing in the smell of her shampoo, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. "You're too good for this world. You know that?" "I learned from you," she whispered into his shoulder. He held her for a long moment, then stood and walked to the door. Patricia was leaning against her car, phone pressed to her ear. When she saw Jack, she ended the call and straightened. 2 weeks, Jack called out. "And if I feel like my daughter's in danger for even a second, Evelyn leaves immediately. No arguments." Patricia smiled. "I'll drop the papers. Evelyn will be very pleased." "When does she want to come?" "Tomorrow, if that works for you." Tomorrow. Jack looked back at his house, at the peeling paint and sagging porch and rooms that hadn't seen anyone but him and Maddie in years. Tomorrow, a woman worth $200 million was going to come live in his broken-down farmhouse because she'd been thrown away by the people who were supposed to love her and somehow found safety in the arms of a stranger. "Tomorrow works," he said, and wondered what the hell he'd just agreed to. The rest of that night passed in a blur of frantic cleaning. Jack scrubbed floors he'd neglected for months, washed windows that hadn't seen a rag in years, cleared out the downstairs guest room that had become a storage space for broken furniture and forgotten dreams. Maddie helped, dusting surfaces and organizing books, humming to herself as she worked. Around midnight, Jack stood in the doorway of the guest room and surveyed his work. It wasn't much. The walls were still bare, the floor still scratched. But it was clean, it was ready, and he'd moved the space heater in there so it would be warm. He walked to his own room and pulled Sarah's quilt from Maddie's bed. She was already asleep, sprawled across her mattress like a starfish. He tucked her favorite stuffed rabbit against her side and carried the quilt downstairs. In the guest room, he spread it across the bed, smoothing out the wrinkles. Sarah had made this quilt the year before her diagnosis, back when they'd talked about having more children, about filling this house with noise and chaos and love. Each square was a different pattern, a different color. She'd said it represented possibility. "Guess we're about to find out," Jack murmured to the empty room. Morning came too fast. Jack was up before dawn, making coffee and checking the house again, making sure everything was perfect. At 8 o'clock, 3 vehicles pulled into his driveway: the black sedan from last night, a white medical van, and a sleek silver SUV. Patricia emerged from the sedan, professional as ever. 2 nurses climbed out of the van, already moving with practiced efficiency. And from the SUV, Evelyn. She was in a new wheelchair, top of the line by the look of it, all carbon fiber and precision engineering. Someone had cleaned her up, treated her wounds. The swelling had gone down, and though bruises still mottled her face in shades of purple and yellow, she looked more human, more alive. Her eyes found Jack's immediately, and she smiled. "Mr. Monroe, I hope I'm not imposing." "Jack, call me Jack." He walked down the porch steps, suddenly aware of his own appearance. Old jeans, flannel shirt, 2 days of beard growth. "And you're not imposing. You're welcome here." "Thank you." Evelyn's voice was stronger than it had been in the hospital, but there was still a fragility to her, a sense that she was held together by willpower and not much else. "I know this is unusual. I know you have every right to refuse, but I need—" She stopped, choosing her words carefully. "I need to feel human again, and hospitals don't let you feel human. They make you feel like a problem to be managed." "I get that." Jack did. He'd spent enough time in hospitals with Sarah to understand the way they stripped away your dignity, your agency, until you were nothing but a diagnosis and a room number. The nurses began unloading equipment from the van, a hospital bed, monitors, medication, supplies. Jack watched them work, watched them transform his guest room into a functional medical space with startling speed. Within an hour, everything was set up, and Evelyn was settled in the bed, hooked up to an IV, vitals being checked. Patricia pulled Jack aside in the kitchen. "The nurses will be here around the clock for the first few days, then just during the day after that. They'll handle all medical needs. Your role is simply to provide the space and, if you're comfortable, some companionship. Evelyn's been through tremendous trauma. Sometimes the best medicine is just knowing you're not alone." "I understand." "The $50,000 will be transferred to your account today. If you need anything, supplies, food, whatever, just let me know. We'll cover all expenses." Patricia handed him a new card, this one with a personal number written on the back. "And Jack? Thank you. What you're doing, it matters more than you know." After Patricia left, Jack stood in his kitchen, listening to the sounds of strangers moving through his house, and felt the strange sensation of his world tilting on its axis. Everything was different now. Everything had changed. "Daddy?" Maddie appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her hair a wild tangle. "Is she here?" "She is. Want to meet her properly?" Maddie nodded eagerly, and Jack led her to the guest room. The nurses had stepped out, giving Evelyn privacy. She was propped up in the hospital bed, looking small and tired but alert. When she saw Maddie, her entire face transformed. "You must be Maddie. Your father talks about you constantly." "He does?" Maddie looked at Jack, who shrugged sheepishly. "He does. He says you're smart and brave and that you make the best soup in the county." "It's just canned soup," Maddie said, suddenly shy. "The best soup isn't about fancy ingredients. It's about who makes it and why." Evelyn gestured to a chair beside the bed. "Would you sit with me? I'd love some company, if you're not too busy." Maddie climbed into the chair, her feet dangling above the floor. "Are you feeling better?" "Much better, thanks to your father. He saved my life." I know, he's good at that. Maddie said it with such simple certainty that Jack felt his throat tighten. When Mama was sick, he saved her lots of times. The doctors said so. Evelyn's eyes flicked to Jack, a question in them, but she didn't press. Then I'm very lucky he found me. Do you hurt? Some, but the nurses are helping with that. Evelyn studied Maddie with open curiosity. Can I ask you something? Okay. Are you scared, having a stranger in your house? Maddie considered this seriously. A little, but Daddy says you're nice and you have a sad face like you need friends, so I think it's okay. Evelyn blinked rapidly, and Jack realized with a start that she was fighting tears. Thank you, Maddie. That's very kind of you to say. You're welcome. Do you like stories? Daddy reads me stories every night. Maybe he could read to you too. I'd like that very much. Jack cleared his throat, struggling with the unexpected emotion flooding through him. We should let you rest. The nurses said you need to sleep as much as possible. Will you come back later? Evelyn asked, looking between them. Both of you? Of course, Maddie promised before Jack could answer. We live here. We're not going anywhere. As they left the room, Jack heard Evelyn whisper something so quietly he almost missed it. Neither am I. The first few days established a rhythm. The nurses, Anna and Sophie, both competent and kind, managed Evelyn's medical needs with quiet efficiency. They checked vitals, administered medications, helped her with physical therapy exercises. Jack stayed out of their way, focusing on his usual routines, taking jobs when they came, making meals for himself and Maddie. But in the evenings, after the day nurse left and before the night nurse arrived, something unexpected happened. They talked. It started the third night when Jack brought Evelyn a cup of tea and found her staring out the window at the darkening sky. She looked lost, adrift in thoughts too heavy to carry alone. You okay? He asked, setting the tea on her bedside table. I've been thinking about my sister, Evelyn said without looking at him. About how we got here. Victoria and I used to be close when we were young. Different mothers, but same father. He died when I was 12, left everything to me because I was the legitimate heir. Victoria got a trust fund, but not control of the company. I always thought she understood. I always thought she didn't care about the money. But she did. She cared about the power, the status. When I got hurt, when the accident put me in this chair, she saw opportunity. Poor crippled Evelyn can't possibly run a company now. Let capable whole Victoria take over. The bitterness in her voice was sharp enough to cut. What she didn't count on was me fighting back, me refusing to disappear quietly. Jack sat in the chair Maddie had occupied earlier. So she tried to make you disappear permanently. Cost-benefit analysis, that's what she'd call it. One dead half-sister versus a lifetime of wealth and control. The math made sense to her. Evelyn finally looked at him, and her eyes were hollow. How do you come back from that? How do you trust anyone again when the person who was supposed to love you most tried to kill you? I don't know, Jack admitted. After Sarah died, I stopped trusting too. Stopped believing anything good could last. Started thinking maybe I was cursed, that everything I touched turned to ash. Your wife, Maddie's mother. Yeah, cancer. 2 years of fighting, then 3 months of dying. She was 31. The words came easier than they used to, worn smooth by repetition. I keep thinking I should have saved her, should have found better doctors, tried different treatments, done something more. You can't save someone from their own body turning against them, Evelyn said gently. Believe me, I've tried. They sat in silence for a moment, two broken people in a broken house, finding unexpected comfort in shared pain. Why did you really come here? Jack asked. Patricia said you needed somewhere safe, but you could have afforded private security, a fortress. Why a stranger's farmhouse? Evelyn smiled, sad and knowing. Because you didn't see me as something that needed fixing. You saw me as someone who needed help. There's a difference. She reached for her tea, her hands steadier than they'd been days ago. Everyone in my life has an agenda. Business partners want my money. Board members want my power. Even the people who claim to care about me. They see my disability first, me second. But you? You just saw a person in a ditch who needed carrying. That's rare, Jack. Rarer than you know. I'm not special. I just did what anyone would do. No, you did what a good person would do. There's a difference there, too. She sipped her tea, wincing slightly. These ribs are taking their time healing. Anna said 3 to 6 weeks for broken ribs. Broken. Like me. Evelyn laughed without humor. Poetic, isn't it? You're not broken. I'm paralyzed and someone tried to murder me. That feels pretty broken. Broken means you can't be fixed, but you're healing. I see it every day. Jack leaned forward. You're getting stronger. Your voice is clear. Your eyes are brighter. You're not broken, Evelyn. You're just bent. And bent things can straighten out given time. She stared at him for a long moment, and something shifted in her expression, something soft and vulnerable and maybe a little bit hopeful. How do you do that? Do what? Make me believe things might actually be okay. Jack shrugged. Same way you do it for me. You remind me I'm not as lost as I think I am. The conversation lingered between them like morning fog, and when Jack finally left her room that night, he felt lighter somehow, less alone. Maddie noticed. She always noticed. You smile more now, she said the next morning over breakfast, since Evelyn came. Do I? Uh-huh. It's nice. I missed your smile. Jack ruffled her hair, uncomfortable with the observation but unable to deny it. Something about having Evelyn in the house, about these nightly conversations, had rekindled something he'd thought was dead forever. It felt dangerous. It felt like hope. A week into Evelyn's stay, Jack came home from a job to find her in the living room. She'd managed to navigate her wheelchair out of the guest room, down the hall, and into the common space, a journey that must have exhausted her, judging by how pale she looked. But she was smiling. I had to see it, she explained when Jack rushed over, concerned. The rest of the house, your space. I've been staring at 4 walls for days and I needed... She gestured helplessly. I needed to feel less like a patient and more like a person. Jack understood. He pulled a chair over and sat beside her. Welcome to the grand tour. As you can see, we've spared no expense on interior decoration. Evelyn laughed, looking around at the mismatched furniture, the duct-taped couch, the crooked picture frames. It's perfect. It's a disaster. It's lived in. It's real. It's... She touched the arm of her wheelchair, choosing her words. It's not trying to be something it's not. I appreciate that more than you know. Maddie came thundering down the stairs, fresh from her afternoon nap, and stopped short when she saw Evelyn. You're out of bed. I am. Is that okay? It's great. Maddie bounced over, all energy and enthusiasm. Now you can have dinner with us. Daddy makes spaghetti on Fridays. It's tradition. Evelyn looked at Jack, eyebrows raised. Spaghetti tradition? Sarah started it. Said every week needed something to look forward to. Jack felt the familiar ache of memory, but it was duller now, less sharp. I kept it going after she died. Seemed important. Can I join you? Evelyn asked quietly. For spaghetti? You're asking permission to eat dinner in a house you're paying for? I'm asking permission to join your family tradition. That's different. Jack met her eyes and saw the vulnerability there, the fear of rejection, the hope for inclusion. He understood that too. You're already part of it, he said. You have been since you got here. That Friday dinner became something they all remembered. Jack cooked his simple spaghetti with jarred sauce and frozen garlic bread while Maddie set the table with exaggerated care, placing Evelyn's plate at what she'd decided was the honored guest position. They ate together in the small dining room, passing food and sharing stories, and for a few hours, they weren't a broke single father, a paralyzed CEO, and a 6-year-old girl dealing with the ghost of a dead mother. They were just people, just a family. When Maddie asked Evelyn about her work, Evelyn explained in simple terms what her company did, how they made medicines that helped sick people feel better. When Jack mentioned his frustration with a stubborn furnace, Evelyn offered suggestions with the calm logic of someone who'd solved complex problems for a living. When Evelyn's hand trembled reaching for her water glass, Maddie steadied it without comment, as natural as breathing. After dinner, Jack read to them, a silly story about a dragon who was afraid of knights, and they all laughed in the right places, groaned at the bad jokes, and fell silent during the emotional parts. And when it was time for bed, when the nurses returned and Evelyn had to go back to her medical reality, she caught Jack's hand and squeezed it. Thank you, she whispered, for letting me forget, just for a little while, about everything that's broken. Nothing here is broken, Jack whispered back. We're all just healing. He meant it, and from the look in her eyes, she believed him. The second week brought changes none of them expected. Evelyn grew stronger, spending more time out of bed, navigating the house with increasing confidence. She started helping Maddie with homework, explaining math concepts with patience Jack didn't possess. She listened to Jack's frustrations about money and work without judgment or pity, offering practical advice when asked and silent support when not. And slowly, quietly, the walls they'd both built around their hearts began to crumble. It happened in small moments. Jack adjusting a blanket over Evelyn's legs without being asked. Evelyn laughing at one of Jack's terrible jokes. Maddie falling asleep between them during a movie, her head on Evelyn's lap, her hand in Jack's. It happened in glances that lasted too long, in conversations that went too deep, in the comfortable silences that spoke louder than words ever could. It happened despite their better judgment, despite their fears, despite everything logic said should keep them apart. On the last night of the second week, Patricia returned with paperwork to discuss next steps. Security had improved. Victoria's trial date was set. Evelyn could return to her life. But as Patricia laid out options, a private facility, a secured apartment, a temporary relocation, Evelyn was silent. Finally, she spoke. What if I stayed? Patricia blinked. Here? But Evelyn, this was always meant to be temporary. You have your company to reclaim, your life to rebuild. I know what I have. Evelyn looked at Jack, who'd been standing in the doorway, listening. But I also know what I found here, and I'm not ready to leave it yet. Patricia glanced between them, understanding dawning in her eyes. I see. Well, that's your decision, of course, but are you sure? Mr. Monroe, are you comfortable with— Stay, Jack said simply. As long as you need. As long as you want. Maddie, who'd been eavesdropping from the stairs, let out a whoop of joy that made them all laugh. After Patricia left, after Maddie had been tucked into bed, Jack and Evelyn sat together in the living room, the only light coming from the dying fire in the hearth. You don't have to do this, Evelyn said. Let me stay, I know I'm disrupting your life. You're not disrupting it. Jack struggled for the right word. You're adding to it, making it bigger, better. I'm scared, Evelyn admitted. Scared that when I leave here, when I go back to my real life, I'll forget what this feels like. Being seen, being valued for something other than my money or my mind, just being me. Then don't leave yet. Stay until you're ready. Until you remember that you're strong enough to face whatever's waiting out there. What if I'm never ready? Jack smiled. Then I guess you're stuck with us. Evelyn reached out, and Jack took her hand, their fingers intertwining naturally, like they'd been doing this for years instead of days. Jack, she said softly, I think you're the bravest person I've ever met. I'm not brave. I'm just stubborn. You carried a stranger 3 miles. You opened your home to danger. You let yourself care again after losing everything. That's not stubbornness. That's courage. She squeezed his hand. You make me want to be brave too. They sat there in the firelight, two wounded souls finding unexpected solace in each other's company, and Jack realized something profound. He'd spent 2 years thinking his life was over, that the best parts had died with Sarah, and all that remained was survival. But maybe he'd been wrong. Maybe life didn't end when you lost someone. Maybe it just paused, waiting for you to find a reason to press play again. Maybe that reason was sitting beside him right now, holding his hand, reminding him that broken people could still build something beautiful together. Stay, he said again. Not because you're scared, not because you're hiding, but because you want to. Because we want you to. Evelyn smiled, and in that smile Jack saw tomorrow and the day after, and all the complicated, beautiful, terrifying possibilities that came with letting someone in. Okay, she whispered. I'll stay. And somewhere in the darkness, something that had been dying for years began, tentatively, carefully, to live again. The third week arrived with unexpected snow, fat flakes that drifted down like torn paper, covering the farmhouse and its surroundings in a blanket of white that made everything look new. Jack woke early as always, but this time he didn't rush through his morning routine. He stood at the kitchen window with his coffee, watching the world transform, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Behind him, the house was still quiet. Maddie wouldn't wake for another hour. The night nurse had left at dawn, and Evelyn. Beautiful, isn't it? Jack turned to find her wheeling herself into the kitchen, wrapped in a thick cardigan he'd never seen before. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, still messy from sleep, and without the careful styling she'd maintained those first few days, she looked younger, more vulnerable, more real. "You're up early," he said. "Couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about yesterday." She moved to the window beside him, gazing out at the snow. "About what Patricia said." Yesterday, Patricia had called with news. Victoria's legal team was pushing for a plea deal, claiming diminished capacity due to financial stress. The other board members were turning on each other, each trying to make deals to save themselves. The case was becoming a circus, and Patricia wanted Evelyn's input on how to proceed. Evelyn had told her to do whatever would put them away longest. Then she'd hung up and hadn't spoken about it again. "You don't have to think about them here," Jack said quietly. That's the whole point of this place." "I know, but I can't hide forever." Evelyn's reflection in the window glass looked troubled. "Patricia wants me to give a deposition next week, face-to-face with Victoria's attorneys. They'll try to tear me apart, make me look unstable, unreliable. They'll use my disability against me." "They can try. Won't make it true." "You don't understand. People see the chair and they make assumptions. Poor helpless Evelyn, probably confused, probably traumatized, probably not a credible witness." Her voice cracked slightly. "I've spent my whole life fighting those assumptions. And now I have to do it again, in front of lawyers who are paid to exploit them." Jack set down his coffee and moved to stand in front of her, blocking her view of the snow, forcing her to look at him instead of her own reflection. "You know what I see when I look at you? A woman in a wheelchair. No. I see someone who survived a murder attempt and refused to stay dead. I see someone who built a company from scratch and changed it to help people instead of just making money. I see someone who sits on my terrible couch and helps my daughter with homework and makes terrible puns about chemical compounds." He knelt down so they were eye level. "I see someone strong. That's what they'll see, too, if you let them." Evelyn's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "How do you always know what to say?" "I don't. Most of the time, I'm just making it up as I go." He took her hands, cold from gripping the wheelchair in the unheated hallway. "But I mean it. You're the strongest person I know, and if you need someone in your corner when you give that deposition, I'll be there." "Jack, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. You've been alone through all of this. You don't have to be alone anymore." The tears spilled over then, tracking down her cheeks, and Jack reached up to brush them away with his thumbs. The gesture was intimate, more intimate than he'd intended, and for a moment they both froze, caught in the significance of the touch. "I don't know what I did to deserve you," Evelyn whispered. "You didn't do anything. You just are. That's enough." They stayed like that, his hands framing her face, her eyes locked on his, and Jack felt the shift between them, the moment when comfort became something more, when companionship crossed into territory neither of them had been brave enough to name. "Daddy, why are you on the floor?" Maddie's voice shattered the moment like dropped glass. Jack pulled back quickly, standing, suddenly aware of how the scene must look. But Maddie just yawned and padded over to Evelyn, climbing into her lap with the casual affection she'd developed over the past weeks. "It's snowing," Maddie announced, as if they hadn't noticed. "Can we build a snowman?" "You want to build a snowman at 6 in the morning?" Jack asked. "No, silly. After breakfast. Evelyn can watch from the window and tell us if we're doing it right." Evelyn wrapped her arms around Maddie, resting her chin on top of the girl's head. "What makes you think I know how to build a snowman?" "Because you're smart. You know everything." I don't know everything, but I'll try my best." Evelyn met Jack's eyes over Maddie's head, and something passed between them, an acknowledgement of what had almost happened, a promise to revisit it later, a shared understanding that this, whatever this was becoming, was worth protecting. They made breakfast together. A chaotic affair of burned toast and undercooked eggs that they ate anyway, laughing at their own incompetence. Then they bundled up, Maddie in her threadbare winter coat, Jack in his work jacket, Evelyn in blankets piled on her lap, and went outside. The cold was sharp and clean, burning Jack's lungs in a way that made him feel alive. Maddie immediately started gathering snow, her small hands working quickly, while Jack packed the base of what would become their snowman. Evelyn watched from the porch, wrapped in blankets, calling out suggestions and encouragement. "His head's too small," she shouted. "He looks like a pinhead." "You're a pinhead," Jack shouted back, and Maddie dissolved into giggles. They worked for over an hour, building not just a snowman, but an entire snow family, a father, a mother, and a child between them. Maddie insisted on using carrots for noses and buttons for eyes, and she placed them with such care that Jack felt his chest tighten. "Look," Maddie said, stepping back to admire their work. "They're holding hands, like a real family." Jack glanced at Evelyn, still watching from the porch, and saw his own emotion reflected in her face. This child who'd lost her mother was building snow families. This child who'd had so little was creating something beautiful out of frozen water and hope. "Perfect," Evelyn called out. "They're absolutely perfect." Later, after they'd come inside and thawed out with hot chocolate, the cheap kind from Powder, the only kind Jack could afford, Maddie fell asleep on the couch between them, exhausted from the cold and the excitement. Jack and Evelyn sat in comfortable silence, watching her sleep, neither wanting to move and disturb her. "She thinks of you as a mother," Evelyn said softly. "The way she looks at you sometimes, the way she climbs into your lap." "I think of her as mine," Evelyn admitted. "I know I have no right. I know it's only been a few weeks, but—" She stopped, struggling with the words. "I never thought I'd have children. After the accident, after the paralysis, I assumed that part of life was closed to me. But Maddie, she makes me feel like maybe I was wrong. Maybe family isn't about biology. Maybe it's about choice." Jack reached over and took her hand, weaving their fingers together. "She loves you. I can see it. And you—" He paused, suddenly afraid of saying too much, of crossing a line he couldn't uncross. "You're good for her. Good for us. You're good for me, too." Evelyn's thumb traced circles on the back of his hand. "I didn't realize how empty my life was until I came here. I had money, power, success, but I didn't have this. People who cared about me for who I am, not what I can do for them." "Is that what we are? People who care?" Evelyn turned to look at him, and in her eyes Jack saw everything she wasn't saying, the fear, the hope, the desperate wish to believe this could be real. "I think we might be more than that." The words hung between them, heavy with implication. Jack's heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. This was the moment. This was where he either leaned in or pulled back, where he either acknowledged what was growing between them or pretended it didn't exist. He leaned in. The kiss was soft, tentative, a question asked with lips instead of words. Evelyn answered by leaning into him, her free hand coming up to cup his jaw. They kissed carefully, mindfully, aware of Maddie sleeping between them, aware of how fragile this moment was. When they pulled apart, Evelyn was smiling. "I've wanted to do that for days." "Me too. I just didn't know if you felt the same way." "Jack, I've been half in love with you since you carried me 3 miles in the freezing cold. I just didn't think I was allowed to feel that way. Didn't think someone like you would want someone like me." "Someone like you? Evelyn, you're brilliant, successful, beautiful, paralyzed, broken. Comes with an attempted murder charge and a family that wants her dead." She said it lightly, but Jack heard the pain underneath. "None of that matters. You could be anyone, from anywhere, with any history, and I'd still—" He stopped, realizing what he was about to say, how much weight those words carried. "Say it," Evelyn whispered. "Please." "I'd still be falling for you." Her breath caught. "Jack, I know it's fast. I know it's crazy. I know I'm a broke single father living in a falling apart farmhouse, and you're everything I'm not. But I can't help how I feel, and I feel—" He struggled to find the right words. "I feel like I've been sleepwalking for 2 years. and you woke me up." Evelyn was crying again, silent tears that tracked down her cheeks and dripped onto their joined hands. "I'm scared. I'm so scared of this, of feeling this way. What if it doesn't last? What if we're just two broken people clinging to each other because we're lonely? What if we're not? What if we're two people who found each other exactly when we needed to?" Jack used his free hand to wipe her tears. "I'm scared too, terrified actually, but I'd rather be terrified with you than numb without you." They kissed again, deeper this time, with more certainty, more promise. And when they pulled apart, Maddie was watching them with sleepy eyes and a knowing smile. "I knew it," she said smugly. "I told Mrs. Kellerman you were going to kiss." Jack felt his face heat. "You told Mrs. Kellerman what?" "That you liked Evelyn. She said I was too young to know about that stuff, but I'm not. I see things." Maddie sat up, suddenly wide awake. "Does this mean Evelyn's staying forever?" Jack and Evelyn looked at each other, and the question that had been hanging between them suddenly had weight, had urgency. "I don't know," Evelyn said carefully. "Would you want that? Me staying?" "Yes!" Maddie threw her arms around Evelyn's neck. "Yes, yes, yes, please stay. Please be my family." Over Maddie's head, Evelyn met Jack's eyes, and he saw his own longing reflected there. This could work. This could be real. All they had to do was be brave enough to try. "Okay," Evelyn whispered, and Jack wasn't sure if she was answering Maddie or him or herself. "Okay, I'll stay." The next few days were different. The house that had felt like a temporary arrangement now felt like a home. Evelyn stopped sleeping in the guest room and started sleeping in the living room, on the terrible couch that Jack kept meaning to replace, saying she wanted to be closer to the heart of the house. They took meals together, did chores together, lived together with an ease that felt simultaneously brand new and ancient as time. Jack caught himself thinking about the future, caught himself imagining Christmases with Evelyn beside him, birthdays with 3 people instead of 2, a life that extended beyond just surviving day to day. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure, but reality had a way of intruding. Patricia called on Thursday with an urgent message. Victoria's legal team had filed a motion to dismiss based on lack of evidence. They were claiming Evelyn's testimony was unreliable due to head trauma, and that without corroborating witnesses, the case was circumstantial. "They're trying to make me disappear again," Evelyn said after ending the call. "Legally this time." "What does Patricia recommend?" "That I come back, give my deposition, fight." Evelyn's hands were shaking. "But Jack, I don't know if I can face them. Victoria will be there. The board members will be there. Everyone who tried to kill me, sitting across a table, staring at me, and I have to stay calm and coherent and not fall apart. You won't be alone. I'll be there. You can't be in the deposition room, only lawyers and witnesses. Then I'll be right outside, and the second you walk out, I'll be there." Jack knelt in front of her, taking both her hands in his. "You can do this. I know you can. What if I freeze? What if I see Victoria and I just break? Then you break, and then you put yourself back together. That's what strong people do." He squeezed her hands. "And if you can't put yourself back together, I'll help. Maddie will help. We'll all help. You're not doing this alone anymore." Evelyn closed her eyes, breathing slowly, centering herself. When she opened them again, there was steel in her gaze. "Okay, we go to the city, we face them, and we make sure they pay for what they did. That's my girl." The words slipped out before Jack could stop them, possessive and intimate, and Evelyn's eyes widened, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she leaned forward and kissed him, soft and quick. "Your girl," she repeated. "I like the sound of that." They left for the city on Saturday morning, all 3 of them packed into Jack's ancient pickup truck. Evelyn had arranged for them to stay in a hotel, a nice one, she insisted, because she wasn't going to face her demons while sleeping in a budget motel. Jack had protested the expense until Evelyn reminded him that she was worth $200 million and could afford a few hotel rooms. The city was everything the farmhouse wasn't: loud, crowded, full of movement and noise and people who never looked you in the eye. Maddie pressed her face against the truck window, mesmerized by the tall buildings and the traffic and the sheer density of humanity. Evelyn sat in the passenger seat, tense and silent, her fingers drumming against her thigh. "You okay?" Jack asked. "No, but I will be." She glanced at him. "Thank you for coming. I know this isn't your world. Anywhere you are is my world." The deposition was scheduled for Monday morning at 9. They spent Sunday trying to distract themselves, taking Maddie to a museum, eating overpriced pizza, walking through a park where the snow had already turned to gray slush. But the tension was there, humming beneath everything, and by evening Evelyn was wound so tight Jack thought she might snap. After Maddie fell asleep in the adjoining room, Jack sat on the edge of Evelyn's bed and pulled her into his arms. She came willingly, burying her face in his chest, her whole body trembling. "I'm terrified," she whispered. "I know. What if I can't do it? What if I see her and I just—" "You will do it, because you're stronger than you think, stronger than they ever gave you credit for." Jack kissed the top of her head. "And tomorrow night, when it's over, we'll come back here and we'll celebrate. All three of us. Because you're going to win." "How do you know?" "Because you already survived the worst thing they could do to you. Everything after that is just details." She pulled back to look at him, her eyes red but dry. "I love you. I know it's too soon. I know I shouldn't say it yet, but I do. I love you, Jack Monroe. And I need you to know that before tomorrow, just in case." Jack's heart felt too big for his chest. "There's no just in case. You're going to be fine. But for the record," he cupped her face in his hands, "I love you too, so damn much it scares me." They kissed like people saying goodbye before a war, desperate and deep and full of promises they both hoped they could keep. And when they finally pulled apart, Evelyn was smiling. "Okay," she said, "I'm ready." Monday morning came too fast and too slow. Jack dressed in the only suit he owned, bought for Sarah's funeral and not worn since, while Evelyn prepared with military precision. Patricia arrived at 8 to brief her one final time, going over questions they'd likely ask, strategies for staying calm, ways to redirect if the lawyers got aggressive. Maddie hugged Evelyn tight before they left. "You're going to be amazing. And then we're getting ice cream, right? The biggest ice cream sundaes you've ever seen," Evelyn promised. The law firm occupied 3 floors of a glass tower downtown. Jack accompanied Evelyn as far as the conference room door where Patricia was waiting. Inside, he could see faces he recognized from news reports. Victoria Crosswell, elegant in a designer suit, looking nothing like a woman who'd tried to murder her sister. 3 board members, all older men in expensive clothes. A team of lawyers, papers stacked in front of them like weapons. "I'll be right here," Jack said, squeezing Evelyn's shoulder. "Right outside this door, the whole time." Evelyn nodded, took a deep breath, and wheeled herself inside. The door closed, and Jack was alone in the hallway with 2 security guards and a receptionist who kept glancing at him like he didn't belong. He didn't. He belonged in a farmhouse with broken furniture and a daughter who needed him. But Evelyn needed him here, so here he stayed. The deposition lasted 4 hours. Jack spent them pacing the hallway, drinking terrible coffee from a machine, checking on Maddie via text. Patricia had arranged for a hotel nanny to watch her, and trying not to imagine what was happening behind that closed door. Finally, the door opened. Patricia emerged first, her expression giving nothing away. Then Evelyn, and Jack's heart stopped. She was crying, but she was also smiling. "I did it," she said as Jack rushed over. "I looked Victoria in the eye and I told them everything, every detail, every betrayal. And she couldn't look at me. She couldn't even look at me." Jack pulled her into his arms, not caring that Patricia and the lawyers and everyone else could see. "I'm so proud of you. They tried to break me, suggested my memory was faulty, implied the trauma made me unreliable. But I had evidence. Patricia found security footage from the parking garage showing them loading me into a car, bank records showing payoffs to the driver who dumped me, text messages between Victoria and the board discussing the Evelyn problem." She was laughing and crying at the same time. "They're done. It's over. We won." Patricia cleared her throat. "Not quite over. Still have to go to trial, but yes, today was a very good day for our side." Jack didn't care about the legal details. He only cared about the woman in his arms, who'd faced her worst nightmare and come out stronger. "Ice cream," he said. "We promised Maddie ice cream." They got ice cream. 3 enormous sundaes with every topping imaginable, eaten in a corner booth of an overpriced parlor while Maddie chattered about her day with the nanny and Evelyn slowly unwound, the tension draining from her shoulders with every bite. "Can we go home now?" Maddie asked eventually. "I miss the farmhouse." Evelyn and Jack exchanged glances. Home? She'd called it home. "Yeah, baby," Jack said. "Let's go home." They drove back that evening, the truck rattling along dark highways while Maddie slept in the middle and Evelyn's hand rested on Jack's thigh, a quiet claim of intimacy that made his heart race. The farmhouse appeared out of the darkness like a beacon, lights on because Jack had left them that way, warm and welcoming. Inside, everything was exactly as they'd left it. The terrible couch, the crooked pictures, the life they'd built out of broken pieces and second chances. "Thank you," Evelyn said as Jack helped her inside. "For everything. For being there today. For believing in me. Always," Jack promised. "I'll always believe in you." They put Maddie to bed together, tucking her in with Sarah's quilt, and stood for a moment watching her sleep. "She's ours," Evelyn whispered. "Isn't she? Not legally, not yet, but in all the ways that matter, she's ours." "Yeah, she is." Jack wrapped his arm around Evelyn's shoulders. "And so are you. Mine, I mean. If you want to be." Evelyn turned to look at him, and in her eyes Jack saw forever. Saw mornings making coffee together and nights reading stories and all the small, perfect moments that built a life worth living. "I want to be," she said, "more than anything." They kissed in the doorway of Maddie's room, sealing promises neither of them fully understood yet, but both were willing to figure out. And in that moment, Jack realized something profound. He'd spent 2 years thinking his life was defined by loss, by what was taken from him. But maybe that was wrong. Maybe life was defined by what you chose to keep, what you fought to protect, what you built from the ashes of what came before. Maybe it was defined by this: a woman who'd been thrown away finding home in a farmhouse full of broken things, a man who'd stopped believing in tomorrow learning to hope again, and a little girl who understood, better than any of them, that family wasn't about blood or biology, it was about love, and they had that in abundance. The weeks that followed the deposition settled into something neither Jack nor Evelyn had expected: normalcy. Not the kind that came from routine or habit, but the kind that emerged when people stopped fighting what they were becoming and simply allowed themselves to be. The farmhouse, which had once been just a structure of wood and nails holding back the cold, transformed into something more. It became a place where laughter lived in the corners, where hope grew in the spaces between words, where 3 people who'd all lost something vital discovered they could build something new together. But the world beyond their small sanctuary hadn't forgotten about Evelyn Crosswell. Patricia called regularly with updates on the trial, on motions filed and denied, on Victoria's increasingly desperate legal maneuvers. The media had caught wind of the story. Billionaire CEO left for dead by her own sister made for compelling headlines. And reporters had started showing up in Millbrook, asking questions, trying to find where the famous Evelyn Crosswell was hiding. Jack came home from the hardware store one afternoon to find a news van parked at the end of his driveway. A blonde woman in a tailored suit was standing beside it, checking her makeup in a compact mirror while a cameraman adjusted his equipment. He pulled his truck up beside them and rolled down his window. "You folks lost?" The woman's smile was practiced, professional. "Mr. Monroe? I'm Rebecca Chen from Channel 7 News. I was hoping to ask you a few questions about Evelyn Crosswell." "Not interested. We're prepared to offer compensation for an exclusive interview. $5,000 for 30 minutes of your time." $5,000. A month ago, that number would have made Jack's head spin. Now it just made him angry. "Ms. Crosswell is recovering from a traumatic experience and deserves privacy. I'd appreciate if you'd respect that and leave." "Mr. Monroe, the public has a right to know." "The public has a right to mind their own business. Now get off my property before I call the sheriff." Rebecca's smile never wavered, but something cold entered her eyes. "We can make this story with or without your cooperation. Wouldn't you rather control the narrative?" Jack put the truck in gear. "I'd rather you leave. You've got 10 seconds. He drove past them toward the house, watching in the rearview mirror as Rebecca said something sharp to her cameraman. They didn't follow, but they didn't leave either. They just repositioned, angling for a better view of the farmhouse. Inside, Evelyn was at the kitchen table with Maddie, helping her with a science project about the water cycle. She looked up when Jack entered, and her smile faltered at his expression. "What's wrong?" "News van at the end of the driveway. Reporter wanting an interview." Jack tossed his keys on the counter harder than necessary. "They offered me money." Evelyn's face went pale. "I was afraid of this. Once the trial date was set, I knew they'd start looking for me." "What do we do?" "We ignore them. They can't come onto the property without permission. Eventually they'll get bored and leave." But they didn't leave. By evening, 2 more vans had arrived, along with several cars carrying photographers with long-lens cameras. They lined the road like vultures, waiting for a glimpse of the famous Evelyn Crosswell, waiting for the story that would boost their ratings and advance their careers. Maddie pressed her face against the living room window, watching them with wide eyes. "Why are they here?" "Because some people think other people's pain is entertainment," Evelyn said bitterly. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. I didn't mean to bring this to your home." "It's your home too," Maddie said simply. "And they're mean. Daddy should make them go away." Jack wished it were that simple. He called Sheriff Morrison, who drove out and told the reporters they had to stay on public property and couldn't harass the residents. It helped, but only marginally. The cameras were still there, still watching, still waiting. That night, after Maddie had gone to bed, Jack found Evelyn in the guest room. She'd moved back there after the reporters arrived, some instinct telling her to create distance, to prepare for the inevitable moment when she'd have to leave. She was staring out the window at the news vans, their lights creating small pools of illumination in the darkness. "I should go," she said without turning around. "This isn't fair to you and Maddie. You didn't sign up for media circuses and invasions of privacy." Jack crossed the room and wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. "We didn't sign up for a lot of things. Doesn't mean we're giving up on them." "Jack, this is only going to get worse. When the trial starts, when I have to testify publicly, it'll be a feeding frenzy, and they'll dig into everything, including you, your finances, your past, your relationship with me. They'll try to make it ugly. Let them try. I've got nothing to hide." "Everyone has something to hide, and even if you don't, they'll invent something. That's what they do." She turned in his arms, her face drawn with worry. "I can't protect you from this. I can barely protect myself." "Then we protect each other." Jack cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. "You think I care what some reporters say about me? You think I care if they print lies or half-truths or whatever sells papers? The only thing I care about is you and Maddie and keeping this family together." "Family," Evelyn repeated, and her eyes filled with tears. "Is that what we are? What else would we be?" She kissed him then, desperate and clinging, like she was trying to memorize the taste of him before it was taken away. Jack kissed her back with equal intensity, pouring everything he couldn't say into the press of lips and the tangle of tongues. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Evelyn was crying in earnest. "I'm so afraid of losing this," she whispered. "Losing you." "You're not going to lose me. I'm not going anywhere." "You say that now, but when this gets really bad, when they start printing stories about the poor single father corrupted by the rich disabled woman, when they make our love look like some kind of transaction, it won't matter because I'll know the truth. We'll know the truth." Jack brushed her tears away with his thumbs. "I love you, Evelyn. Not your money, not your company, not anything except who you are. And no reporter can change that." She buried her face in his chest, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Jack held her, stroking her hair, whispering reassurances into the darkness. And he meant every word. But even as he spoke them, a small part of him wondered if he was strong enough to weather what was coming. He'd find out soon enough. The next morning brought more reporters, more cameras, and a new development that made Jack's blood run cold. Someone had leaked Maddie's name to the press. By noon, articles were appearing online about the 6-year-old girl caught in the middle of the Crosswell scandal. They included her age, her school, even a photo, grainy and taken from a distance, but unmistakably Maddie. Jack saw red. He stormed outside past the property line, directly up to Rebecca Chen's van. "You published a story about my daughter." Rebecca had the grace to look uncomfortable. Mr. Monroe, we had a responsibility to report all aspects of she's 6 years old. She's not part of this story. And if you or anyone else publishes another word about her, I will sue you for everything you have. Do you understand me? That's a very serious threat, Mr. Monroe. It's not a threat, it's a promise. Jack's voice was deadly quiet. My daughter has been through enough. She lost her mother 2 years ago. She's finally starting to heal, to be happy again. And I will not let you people turn her life into a spectacle for your ratings. Something in his tone must have convinced her. Rebecca nodded slowly. I'll pull the story, but I can't control what other outlets do. Then I'll deal with them too, one by one if I have to. He turned and walked back to the house, his hands shaking with suppressed rage. Inside, Evelyn was pacing the kitchen, her phone pressed to her ear, her voice sharp with authority. I don't care what it costs, Patricia. I want an injunction. Any outlet that publishes identifying information about a minor child faces immediate legal action. Yes, I know it's aggressive. That's the point. She paused, listening. Good. File it today. She hung up and immediately started dialing another number. Jack watched her transform before his eyes. The soft, vulnerable woman he'd held last night replaced by the CEO who'd built an empire. This was Evelyn Crosswell in her element, wielding power like a weapon, protecting what was hers. Who are you calling now? My head of security. I should have done this weeks ago. She held up a finger as someone answered. Marcus? It's Evelyn. I need a team at this address immediately. Full perimeter coverage, electronic countermeasures, and I want those reporters pushed back to at least 500 feet from the property. I don't care if it's public road, find a legal justification. Another pause. Excellent. And Marcus? I want it done today. By evening, black SUVs had arrived, and men in suits were setting up equipment around the property. The reporters, faced with private security and the threat of legal action, retreated to a more distant position. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. Maddie watched the proceedings with fascination. Are those bodyguards, like in the movies? Something like that, Evelyn said, pulling the girl into her lap. I'm sorry you had to see all this. I'm sorry people are being intrusive. It's okay. Daddy says famous people always have to deal with annoying stuff. Maddie patted Evelyn's hand consolingly. But you're not annoying, you're nice. Evelyn laughed, the sound brittle but genuine. Thank you, sweetheart. That might be the nicest thing anyone said to me all day. That night, after Maddie was asleep and the security team had established their positions, Jack and Evelyn sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, watching the distant glow of camera lights beyond the new perimeter. This is my life now, Evelyn said quietly. Even after the trial, even after Victoria's convicted, there will always be cameras, always people watching, always speculation about what I'm doing and why. Is it worth it? The company, the money, all of it? Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. The money itself? No. But what I can do with it, the medicines we make affordable, the research we fund, the people we help, that's worth it. That matters. She looked at him. But I won't lie, Jack. Sometimes I wonder what my life would be like if I'd made different choices. If I'd stayed small, stayed quiet, stayed in my lane. You'd be miserable. You're not built for small and quiet. Neither are you, apparently. You could have turned me away that first day, could have called 911 and kept driving, but you didn't. No, I didn't. Jack took her hand, cold in the winter air, and I don't regret it. Not for a second. Not even with reporters camped outside your home? Not even with your daughter's face in the news? Not even then, because the alternative is not having you. And that's not an alternative I can live with. Evelyn leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat in silence. Two people clinging to each other in the face of a storm they couldn't control but refused to run from. The trial date was set for January 15th, 6 weeks away. Patricia called it a Christmas gift. Juries were traditionally more sympathetic during the holidays, and prosecutors wanted to capitalize on that sentiment. Victoria's team protested, claiming they needed more time to prepare, but the judge denied the motion. She's running scared, Patricia told Evelyn during one of her visits. Her lawyers know the evidence is damning. They're trying every procedural trick in the book to delay, but it won't work. We have her. What about the others? The board members. 2 have taken deals. They're testifying against Victoria in exchange for reduced sentences. The 3rd is going to trial separately. Patricia pulled out a folder. Which brings me to my next point. The prosecution wants you to testify, not just about the attempt on your life, but about everything. The corporate coup, the embezzlement, the systematic abuse of power. They want to paint a complete picture. Evelyn's hands tightened on the arms of her wheelchair. How long would I be on the stand? 2 days, maybe 3. Victoria's team will cross-examine and they'll be brutal. They'll try to rattle you, discredit you, make you look unstable or vindictive. Patricia's expression was grave. I won't lie, Evelyn, it's going to be the hardest thing you've ever done. Harder than being thrown in a ditch and left to die? Different. Physical pain ends. This kind of pain, having your trauma picked apart in front of strangers, having your sister's lawyers call you a liar, that stays with you. Jack, who'd been listening from the doorway, stepped forward. What does she get if she does this, besides justice? Her company back, full control, reinstated position as CEO. And Victoria goes to prison for attempted murder, conspiracy, fraud. She'll be locked up for decades. Patricia looked at Evelyn. But more than that, you get to stop hiding. You get your life back. Do I? Evelyn's voice was small. Or do I just trade one prison for another? The corporate world, the public scrutiny, the constant pressure to prove I'm capable despite my disability? You've already proved that, multiple times over. Have I? Because from where I'm sitting, all I've proved is that people will betray you the moment you stop being useful. That love is conditional. That trust is a luxury I can't afford. Jack knelt in front of her, taking her hands. That's not true. You know that's not true. Do I? Jack, you're kind and good and decent, but you're also practical. What happens when the trial's over and I go back to my real life? When I'm working 18-hour days and attending board meetings and traveling constantly? When I'm not the broken woman who needs saving anymore? Then you'll be the strong woman who saved herself. And I'll be proud as hell. Jack squeezed her hands. You think I fell in love with you because you needed rescuing? I fell in love with you because you're brilliant and fierce, and you look at the world and see what it could be instead of what it is. I fell in love with the woman who changed her company's entire focus to help people instead of making money. The woman who sits with my daughter and explains why the sky is blue and why water freezes. That woman doesn't need saving. She just needs someone to stand beside her. Tears were streaming down Evelyn's face. What if that's not enough? What if I'm not enough? You're more than enough. You're everything. Patricia cleared her throat delicately. I'll give you some privacy. Evelyn, think about the testimony, but I need an answer by next week. After she left, Jack and Evelyn stayed as they were, him kneeling, her crying, both of them caught in the gravity of decisions that would shape the rest of their lives. I'm terrified of going back, Evelyn finally said. The city, the company, the life I had, it feels like a trap. Like the moment I step back into it, I'll lose everything I've found here. What have you found here? Peace, purpose, love. She looked at him through her tears. You, Maddie, a life that isn't defined by my net worth or my disability or what I can do for other people, just life, simple and complicated and real. Then don't go back, not to that life anyway. Jack, I can't just walk away from my company. People depend on it. The research we're doing, the medications we're developing, it matters. I know it does. But maybe there's a middle ground. Maybe you can run your company without letting it consume your entire existence. Maybe you can be CEO and still be the woman who helps Maddie with homework. Maybe you can have both. Can I? Because it feels like every time I try to have both, something gets sacrificed. And I'm afraid, her voice cracked. I'm afraid it'll be this, us. Jack stood and pulled her into his arms, lifting her out of the wheelchair and carrying her to the couch. He sat with her in his lap, holding her like she was something precious and breakable, which in that moment she was. I'm not going anywhere, he said into her hair. I don't care if you're CEO of a Fortune 500 company or working at the local diner. I don't care if you live in a penthouse or this falling apart farmhouse. I care about you, just you, and whatever life you choose, I want to be part of it. What about Maddie? She needs stability. She needs to see that love is real, that commitment means something, that when life gets hard, you don't run, You fight. Jack pulled back to look at her. And she needs to see her father happy. Which I haven't been for 2 years. Not until you. Evelyn touched his face, tracing the lines around his eyes, the scar on his chin from a childhood fall, the evidence of a life lived fully despite its hardships. You make me believe in things I thought were lost forever, like trust, like safety, like the possibility of actually being happy instead of just successful. Then be happy. Testify, reclaim your company, do what you need to do, but come back here. Come back to us. Make this your home base, your safe harbor. Let us be the place you return to when the world gets too heavy. You'd really want that. A girlfriend who's gone half the time, who brings corporate drama and media attention and all the complications that come with my life. I'd want you however I can have you. But Evelyn, he paused, choosing his words carefully. I don't want you as my girlfriend. Her face fell. Oh, I want you as my wife. The words hung in the air between them, shocking in their simplicity, terrifying in their implications. Evelyn stared at him, her mouth open, her eyes wide. That's Jack, we've only known each other 2 months. That's insane. I know, but I'm 42 years old. I've been married before. I know what love feels like, and I know what it feels like to lose it. And what I feel for you, he took a shaky breath. It's real. It's strong. And it's not going away no matter how much time passes or how many complications life throws at us. Are you proposing right now? Because this is possibly the worst timing in the history of proposals. No, I'm not proposing. Not yet. Because you're right. We've only known each other 2 months, and you're in the middle of the biggest legal battle of your life, and nothing about this situation is ideal. Jack cupped her face in his hands. But I'm telling you my intentions. I'm telling you that when this trial is over and you've reclaimed your life and you're ready, I'm going to ask you properly, with a ring and everything. And I'm going to hope like hell you say yes. Evelyn was crying again, but she was also laughing. You're crazy. You know that? Probably. Maddie gets it from me. I love you. God help me. I love you so much it terrifies me. Good. I'd hate to be terrified alone. They kissed, deep and slow, a promise of things to come. And when they pulled apart, Evelyn was smiling. Okay, she said. I'll testify. I'll face Victoria and reclaim my company. And then, she paused, her smile turning mischievous. We'll see about that proposal. Is that a yes? It's a maybe, but it's a very strong maybe. Jack laughed and pulled her close again. And for the first time in weeks, the future didn't feel quite so terrifying. The weeks leading up to the trial were a blur of preparation. Patricia drilled Evelyn on testimony, running through questions until she could answer them in her sleep. Jack took on extra jobs to keep himself busy, to keep his mind from spiraling into worst-case scenarios. And Maddie, blissfully unaware of the stakes, continued being 6 years old, demanding bedtime stories and helping Evelyn bake cookies, and generally reminding them both that life continued regardless of trials and reporters and the weight of the world. 3 days before the trial was set to begin, Evelyn received a visitor. A black town car pulled up to the house, past the security checkpoint, and a man in his 60s emerged. He was distinguished, gray-haired, wearing a coat that probably cost more than Jack's truck. "Who is that?" Jack asked, watching from the window. Evelyn's face had gone pale. "That's Richard Thornton, my father's oldest friend. He's on the board, or was before the coup. He's one of the few people who supported me." She went to the door and Jack followed, protective instinct kicking in. Richard's expression was grave as Evelyn invited him inside. "Miss Crosswell, thank you for seeing me." He glanced at Jack, a question in his eyes. "This is Jack Monroe. He saved my life. Whatever you need to say, you can say it in front of him." Richard nodded slowly. "I'll be direct. Victoria's team has approached me with an offer. If I testify that you were exhibiting erratic behavior before the coup, if I support their narrative that you were mentally unfit, they'll offer me immunity from investigation into my own financial dealings." Evelyn's face hardened. "And you came here to tell me you're taking the deal?" No, I came here to tell you I'm not, and to warn you that they're going to try the same tactic with others. They're desperate, Evelyn. The evidence is damning, but if they can convince the jury you were unstable, that your disability affected your judgment, my disability has nothing to do with my judgment. I know that. But a jury might not, especially if they hear from multiple witnesses claiming you were acting strangely. Richard pulled out a folder. I've compiled a list of everyone who might be vulnerable to their offers. People with secrets, people with debts, people who might be willing to lie to save themselves. Evelyn took the folder with shaking hands. Thank you. Thank you. Your father was my best friend. I failed to protect you when the coup happened, but I won't fail you now. Richard's voice was firm. Victoria destroyed something good when she went after you, and I intend to help make sure she pays for it. After he left, Evelyn sat at the kitchen table with the folder unopened in front of her. Jack made her tea, added too much sugar the way she liked it, and sat beside her in silence. It never ends, she said eventually. Even when you think you've hit bottom, there's always another level down. You don't have to do this. You could settle, take the money, walk away. And let Victoria win? Let her destroy the company my father built? Let everyone think she was right about me? Evelyn shook her head. No. I didn't survive being thrown in a ditch to back down now. Then we fight. All the way to the end. Evelyn looked at him, and in her eyes, Jack saw exhaustion and determination in equal measure. Will you come with me? To the trial? I know it's a lot to ask, but yes, of course, yes. What about Maddie? Mrs. Kellerman offered to watch her. She'll be safe. Thank you. Evelyn reached for his hand. I couldn't do this without you. Yes, you could, but you don't have to. They sat together in the fading afternoon light, holding hands across the table, two people preparing for battle, finding strength in each other's presence. Tomorrow they would pack. The day after, they would drive to the city. And the day after that, Evelyn would walk into a courtroom and face the sister who tried to kill her. But tonight, they had this moment, this peace, this home they'd built from broken pieces and second chances, and for now, it was enough. The courthouse stood like a monument to justice, or perhaps to its absence, depending on who you asked. Jack had never been inside a building quite like it, all marble columns and vaulted ceilings, the kind of place that made you whisper even when you didn't need to. He pushed Evelyn's wheelchair through the metal detectors while cameras flashed outside, reporters shouting questions that neither of them acknowledged. Patricia met them in the lobby, immaculate in a navy suit, her expression carefully neutral. They're already inside. Victoria, her legal team, and about 24 spectators. The jury was seated yesterday. She crouched down to Evelyn's level. Last chance to back out. We can still settle. No. Evelyn's voice was steel wrapped in silk. We're doing this. The courtroom was smaller than Jack had imagined, more intimate. Victoria sat at the defense table, flanked by 3 lawyers who probably cost more per hour than Jack made in a month. She looked different than she had at the deposition, thinner, paler, her expensive clothes hanging slightly loose. When Evelyn entered, Victoria's eyes snapped to her sister, and for just a moment something flickered across her face. Regret? Fear? Jack couldn't tell. Then her expression smoothed into practiced indifference, and she looked away. The trial began with opening statements. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Caroline Wu, painted a picture of greed and betrayal, of a woman who'd been systematically stripped of her power and then nearly stripped of her life. Victoria's lead attorney, a silver-haired man named Douglas Blackwood, countered with a narrative of mental instability, of a disabled CEO making increasingly erratic decisions, of concerned board members trying to protect a company from its own founder. Jack sat in the gallery directly behind Evelyn, close enough to touch her shoulder when her hands trembled, close enough to remind her she wasn't alone. He watched Victoria throughout Blackwood's statement, watched her nod at the right moments, dab at her eyes with calculated precision. She was good. Too good. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if the jury believed her? Then Caroline called her first witness, and doubt evaporated. Richard Thornton took the stand with the authority of a man who'd spent 40 years in boardrooms. He testified about Evelyn's competence, her vision, her ability to lead despite her disability. He detailed the coup with clinical precision, the backroom meetings, the falsified medical reports, the systematic campaign to undermine her authority. And when Blackwood tried to shake him during cross-examination, Richard didn't budge. "Mr. Thornton, isn't it true that Ms. Crosswell became increasingly paranoid after her accident?" "No, she became increasingly aware of the betrayal happening around her. There's a difference." "But she made accusations against board members." "Accusations that turned out to be true. We found evidence of embezzlement, of kickbacks, of decisions made specifically to enrich certain members at the company's expense. Evelyn wasn't paranoid. She was right." The testimony continued for 3 days. Employees who'd witnessed the coup, accountants who'd uncovered the financial irregularities, the driver who'd been paid to dump Evelyn in that ditch. He'd taken a plea deal and now sat on the stand, pale and shaking, describing how Victoria had given him $5,000 and an address in the middle of nowhere. "She said to make it look like an accident," he testified, his voice barely above a whisper. "Said Ms. Crosswell had wandered off, gotten confused. Said to leave her where nobody would find her for a while." "And did you question these instructions?" "No, I needed the money. My daughter needed surgery. I didn't—" He broke down, sobbing. "I didn't think she'd die. I thought someone would find her." Jack felt Evelyn stiffen in front of him. He leaned forward and squeezed her shoulder gently. She reached up and covered his hand with hers, holding on like an anchor. On the 4th day, Caroline called Evelyn to the stand. The courtroom fell silent as Jack helped her navigate to the witness box. She looked small up there, dwarfed by the judge's bench and the jury box and the weight of everything riding on her testimony. But when she spoke, her voice was clear and steady. Caroline led her through it gently. The accident that had paralyzed her, the changes she'd made to the company afterward, the growing resistance from the board. Evelyn described the coup in detail, the emergency meeting she hadn't been invited to, the vote that had stripped away her authority. She talked about the lawsuit she'd filed, the evidence she'd gathered, the threats she'd started receiving. What kind of threats? Anonymous emails saying I should disappear, phone calls in the middle of the night telling me to stop fighting, a brick through my apartment window with a note that said, "Back off." Evelyn's hands were clasped tightly in her lap. "I reported everything to the police, but they said without proof of who was sending them, there was nothing they could do." "And then what happened?" "Then I woke up in a car with a bag over my head. I could hear voices, Victoria's voice and at least one other person. They were arguing about where to take me. Victoria said somewhere far, somewhere it would take a while for me to be found." Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. "If I was ever found at all." The courtroom was absolutely still. Even the court reporter had stopped typing, caught up in the narrative. "I couldn't move. My legs—" Evelyn gestured helplessly. "They pulled me out of the car and threw me in a ditch. Victoria stood over me and said—" She paused, gathering herself. She said, "You should have taken the money and disappeared quietly. Now you don't get a choice." "What happened next?" "I crawled. I don't know how far or for how long. Everything hurt. It was freezing. I thought I was going to die out there." Evelyn looked directly at Jack, and he saw the moment plain behind her eyes. The fog, the cold, the certainty of death. "And then Jack found me. He carried me 3 miles to his home and saved my life." Caroline let that statement breathe for a moment before continuing. "Ms. Crosswell, have you ever exhibited any symptoms of mental instability or diminished capacity?" "No. I've been evaluated by 3 independent psychiatrists since the coup. All of them found me competent. What I did exhibit was righteous anger at being betrayed by people I trusted, and apparently that made me a threat that needed to be eliminated." Caroline smiled slightly. No further questions. Blackwood stood for cross-examination, and Jack felt his entire body tense. This was it. This was where Victoria's team would try to tear Evelyn apart. "Miss Crosswell, you've painted yourself as a victim. But isn't it true that your judgment has been impaired since your accident?" "No." "Isn't it true that you made several questionable business decisions that cost the company millions?" "I redirected our focus toward affordable medication and rare disease research." "That's not a questionable decision. That's a moral one." "A moral one that decreased shareholder value by 30%. initially, but in the long term it would have increased our reputation, expanded our market share, and created sustainable growth. The board couldn't see past quarterly earnings. Or perhaps you couldn't see past your own ego. Blackwood's tone sharpened. Isn't it true that you refused to step down even when it became clear the board had lost confidence in your leadership? The board lost confidence because I wouldn't let them embezzle company funds. That's not a leadership problem. That's a corruption problem. You're making serious accusations. I'm stating documented facts. We have bank records, email trails, witness testimony. My CFO has already pleaded guilty to fraud. 3 board members have taken plea deals. This isn't speculation, Mr. Blackwood. This is reality. The cross-examination continued for 2 more hours. Blackwood tried every angle: her disability, her judgment, her supposed vindictiveness, her relationship with Jack. That last one made Jack's blood boil. Isn't it true, Ms. Crosswell, that you offered Mr. Monroe $50,000 to house you? I compensated him for disruption to his household, yes. $50,000 for 2 weeks seems excessive, unless you were buying something more than just accommodation. Patricia was on her feet immediately. Objection. Counsel is implying sustained. Mr. Blackwood, stick to relevant questions. But the damage was done. The jury had heard the implication that Evelyn had somehow bought Jack's loyalty, his testimony, maybe even his affection. Jack saw red creeping into the edges of his vision. Evelyn, however, remained calm. I paid Mr. Monroe market rate for private accommodations with medical support, the same amount I would have paid for any secure location. The fact that he also became a friend, and yes, more than a friend, has nothing to do with compensation and everything to do with the fact that he's a good man who saw me as a person when everyone else saw me as a problem to be solved. A good man or a convenient one? A genuine one, something you might not be familiar with. Several jurors smiled. Blackwood's jaw tightened. No further questions. Further? As Evelyn returned to her seat beside Patricia, she was shaking so badly Jack could see it from 3 feet away. He wanted to go to her, hold her, tell her she'd been magnificent. But the trial wasn't over yet. The prosecution rested. The defense called their witnesses, board members who painted Evelyn as unstable, doctors who'd been paid to sign affidavits about her mental state, business analysts who testified about the company's declining value. But Caroline dismantled them one by one during cross-examination, revealing conflicts of interest, exposing lies, demonstrating bias. On the 7th day, Victoria took the stand. She was poised, professional, playing the role of concerned sister to perfection. She testified about how worried she'd been about Evelyn, how the disability had changed her, how she'd tried to help but Evelyn had pushed her away. She denied everything: the coup, the threats, the attempted murder. She claimed she'd been in Chicago the night Evelyn disappeared, had alibis, had proof. But when Caroline stood for cross-examination, the facade began to crack. Ms. Crosswell, you testified that you were in Chicago on the night of November 2nd. That's correct. And yet we have cell phone records placing your phone in Millbrook County at 9:47 p.m. that evening. Victoria's lawyer whispered something urgent in her ear. I may have been mistaken about the date. You may have been mistaken about the night you attempted to murder your sister. Objection. Sustained. Counselor, rephrase. You may have been mistaken about the night your sister disappeared under suspicious circumstances. I was traveling a lot. The dates blur together. I see. And do you recognize this? Caroline held up a photograph. Victoria standing beside a black sedan, the same sedan the driver had identified. This was taken by a traffic camera on Route 47, approximately 5 miles from where Ms. Crosswell was found. The timestamp is 9:53 p.m. on November 2nd. Victoria went pale. And this? Another photograph, this one showing Victoria handing something to the driver outside a warehouse. The driver testified you paid him $5,000 cash. We've confirmed the serial numbers on some of those bills match cash you withdrew from your personal account 2 days earlier. The courtroom erupted. Victoria's lawyers were on their feet, objecting, demanding recesses, but it was too late. The jury had seen everything. The truth was out there, impossible to deny. When the judge finally called order, Victoria was crying. Real tears this time, not calculated ones. She was ruining everything, she said, her voice breaking. The company Dad built. She was going to destroy it with her bleeding heart nonsense about affordable medication and helping people who couldn't pay. She didn't understand business. She didn't understand that sentiment doesn't pay dividends. So you tried to kill her? I tried to. I just wanted her gone. I wanted her to disappear so the company could survive. I didn't mean... She looked at Evelyn for the first time, and her expression was a mixture of hatred and desperation. You always got everything. Dad's love, his company, his legacy. I got scraps. And when you got hurt, I finally saw an opportunity to take what should have been mine. But you couldn't just accept it. You had to fight. You always had to fight. Because it was mine, Evelyn said quietly from her seat. Because I built it into something that mattered. Because I refused to let greed destroy something good. The judge slammed his gavel. Miss Crosswell, you're not to speak out of turn, but I think we've heard enough. He looked at Victoria with something like disgust. I'm calling a recess. We'll reconvene tomorrow for closing arguments. That night, back at the hotel, Evelyn finally broke. Jack held her while she sobbed, years of betrayal and pain and fear pouring out in great heaving gasps. She cried for the sister she'd loved, for the father who'd died too soon, for the company that had been corrupted, for the life she'd almost lost. It's over, Jack whispered into her hair. It's finally over. Is it? What if the jury... They won't. You saw their faces. They believe you. But what if... No what ifs. Not tonight. Tonight you rest. Tomorrow we finish this. And then... He pulled back to look at her. Then we go home. Back to the farmhouse. Back to Maddie. Back to our life. Our life, Evelyn repeated, like she was testing the words. I like the sound of that. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. Jack spent them pacing the hallway outside the courtroom, his phone clutched in his hand, reading Maddie's texts about what she and Mrs. Kellerman were baking. Evelyn sat motionless in her wheelchair, Patricia beside her, both women silent with anticipation. When the bailiff finally called them back, Jack's heart was pounding so hard he thought it might break through his chest. The jury filed in, their faces carefully blank. Jack tried to read them and couldn't. The foreman stood. In the case of the People versus Victoria Crosswell, on the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. The courtroom erupted. Victoria screamed. Her lawyers immediately began preparing appeals. But none of it mattered because Evelyn was crying and laughing at the same time, and Patricia was hugging her, and Jack was pushing through the barrier to get to her. He dropped to his knees in front of her wheelchair and took her hands. You did it. You actually did it. We did it, she corrected. I couldn't have survived any of this without you. The judge was still speaking, setting a sentencing date, but Jack didn't hear any of it. He only heard Evelyn's voice, only saw her face, only felt the overwhelming relief that this nightmare was finally ending. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Patricia handled them with practiced ease while Jack and Evelyn slipped out a side entrance. In the car heading back to the hotel, Evelyn was quiet. What are you thinking? Jack asked. That I spent 2 years building my company into something good, and it took 2 months for people I trusted to tear it all apart. She looked at him. And it took one man I barely knew to put me back together. You put yourself back together. I just held some of the pieces. You did more than that. You gave me a reason to fight, a reason to survive. She reached for his hand. Jack, about what you said before, about wanting to, about your intentions. Yes? Ask me. Jack's heart stopped. What? Ask me. Now. Today. I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to be practical or sensible or think about timing. I want you. I want us. I want our family. Jack looked at the driver, who was very deliberately not listening, then back at Evelyn. I don't have a ring. I don't care about a ring. This is possibly the least romantic proposal in history. I don't care about romance. I care about you. Her eyes were bright with tears and hope. Please, Jack, ask me. So he did. Right there in the back of a town car, still in his courthouse clothes, with no ring and no plan, and nothing but his heart on his sleeve, Jack Monroe asked Evelyn Crosswell to marry him. I don't have much to offer you. A broken-down farmhouse, a daughter who asks too many questions, and a life that's never going to be easy or simple or anything like what you're used to. But I love you. I love you more than I thought I could love anyone again. And if you'll have me, if you'll have us, I promise to spend every day making you happy. Yes, Evelyn said immediately. Yes, yes, 1,000 times, yes. They kissed in the back seat while Chicago traffic crawled around them, and Jack felt something he hadn't felt in years, absolute, uncomplicated joy. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. Victoria was sentenced to 22 years in prison. The board was dissolved, and Evelyn was reinstated as CEO with full authority. She held her first press conference from the farmhouse porch, Jack and Maddie standing beside her, and announced a new direction for Crosswell Biotech, partnerships with nonprofit organizations, expanded research into rare diseases, and a commitment to keeping medication affordable. My sister tried to kill me because I believe profit shouldn't come at the expense of people, Evelyn said, her voice carrying across the assembled reporters. She failed, and this company will continue to prioritize patients over shareholders. That's not just good ethics, that's good business. The reporters ate it up. Within days, Crosswell Biotech's stock had rebounded. Orders poured in, partnerships were formed. Evelyn had won in every possible way. But the real victory came later in the quiet moments. Maddie helping Evelyn bake cookies, the two of them laughing over flour-covered counters, Jack reading to both of them at night, their small family curled together on the terrible couch. Evelyn working from the kitchen table, running a billion-dollar company in sweatpants while Maddie colored beside her. 2 months after the trial, on a Saturday afternoon when snow was falling soft and silent, Evelyn pulled out 2 small boxes. Jack and Maddie were building a fire in the living room, arguing good-naturedly about the best way to stack logs, when Evelyn cleared her throat. I have something for both of you. Maddie bounced over immediately. Presents? Sort of. Evelyn handed Jack one box and Maddie the other. Open them together. Jack's box contained a key, old brass attached to a leather keychain. What's this? A key to the farmhouse, which I bought last week. You've been renting, right? Well, now you own it, both of you. It's in your names, yours and Maddie's. Jack stared at the key, then at Evelyn, unable to process what she was saying. You bought my house? Our house. I bought our house. Because I'm tired of this being temporary. I'm tired of feeling like I'm visiting my own life. She looked between them. I want this to be permanent. I want us to be permanent. But your company can be run from anywhere. I'll travel when I need to, but my home is here. With you. She turned to Maddie. Your turn, sweetheart. Maddie opened her box and gasped. Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with 3 charms, a house, a heart, and a little girl figure. It's beautiful. Each charm represents part of our family. The house is our home, the heart is our love, and the girl, that's you. The piece that makes us complete. Evelyn's voice was thick with emotion. Maddie, I know I'm not your mother. I could never replace her. But if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of your family. I'd like to help raise you and love you and be there for all the big moments and the small ones. Maddie threw herself at Evelyn, wrapping her arms around her neck. Yes, you're already family. You've been family forever. Jack was crying now, unable to stop the tears that had been building for months. He joined them, wrapping both of them in his arms, and they stayed like that for a long time, 3 people who'd all lost something, finding everything they needed in each other. Marry me, Evelyn said again, looking at Jack over Maddie's head. Not someday. Soon. I don't want to wait anymore. We just got engaged 2 months ago. So? We've already lived through attempted murder, media circuses, and corporate espionage. I think we can handle a quick engagement. She smiled. Besides, I'm not getting any younger, and I want to start our life together now, not someday. Jack laughed through his tears. Okay, yes. When? Spring, April maybe? Small ceremony, just us and the people we love. Nothing fancy. Just real. That sounds perfect. They were married on April 15th in the backyard of the farmhouse, under a canopy of cherry blossoms that Evelyn had paid to have planted. Mrs. Kellerman stood as witness. Patricia flew in from Chicago. A handful of friends and neighbors formed the audience, and Maddie, wearing a white dress and carrying flowers, walked Evelyn down the aisle, or rather, pushed her wheelchair with solemn concentration. The ceremony was simple. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises about partnership and love and choosing each other every day, even when it was hard. Jack slipped a ring on Evelyn's finger, white gold with a small diamond, nothing ostentatious, perfect. Evelyn gave Jack a matching band and whispered, "You make me believe in second chances." When the officiant said, "You may kiss your bride," Jack lifted Evelyn from her wheelchair and kissed her while everyone cheered, and for one perfect moment, everything else fell away. The past pain, the future uncertainty, all of it. There was only this: a man, a woman, a little girl, and the life they were building together. The reception was held in the farmhouse, casual and warm. They ate cake, danced to music from a borrowed speaker, and laughed until their sides hurt. Maddie gave a toast that consisted entirely of, "I love you both, and I'm glad you got married," which made everyone cry. Richard Thornton attended and told stories about Evelyn's father that made her smile through tears. Even Sheriff Morrison stopped by with congratulations and an assurance that the remaining reporters had finally given up and gone home. As the sun set and guests began to leave, Jack found himself on the porch with Evelyn, watching the sky turn gold and pink. Maddie was inside, showing Patricia her room, chattering away about school and friends, and all the normal, beautiful things that filled a child's life. "I keep waiting for something to go wrong," Evelyn admitted, "for this to be too good to be true." "It's not too good, it's just good. We earned this." "Did we?" "Because it feels like I won the lottery. I lost everything, my company, my trust in people, nearly my life. And somehow I ended up here, with you, with Maddie, with this life that's better than anything I had before. You didn't lose everything. You lost the wrong things, and you found the right ones." Evelyn leaned her head on his shoulder. "I used to measure success in quarterly earnings and stock prices. Now I measure it in Maddie's laughter and your terrible coffee and the way this house creaks in the wind. My coffee isn't that bad. It's awful, but I love it anyway." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the sky darken, and Jack felt something he'd stopped believing was possible: complete and absolute contentment. Not happiness that came from external things, but peace that came from being exactly where he was supposed to be, with exactly who he was supposed to be with. "Thank you," Evelyn said suddenly. "For what?" "For seeing me in that ditch and not driving past. For carrying me 3 miles. For opening your home and your heart. For giving me a family when I thought I'd never have one. You gave me the same thing. A reason to stop just surviving and start living again. We saved each other then." "Yeah, we did." Inside, Maddie was calling for them, something about Patricia wanting to see photos from when she was a baby. Evelyn laughed and started to wheel toward the door, but Jack stopped her. He knelt down, looked her in the eyes, and said the thing he'd been thinking for months but hadn't quite known how to articulate. "I don't believe in fate. I don't believe things happen for a reason, but I believe in choice. And every day, I choose you. Every single day, I choose this life, this family, this love. And I'll keep choosing it for as long as you'll have me." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "I'll have you forever. Is that long enough?" "It's a good start." They kissed as the last light faded from the sky. Two people who'd been thrown away by the world finding something precious in each other. And when they finally went inside hand in hand, it wasn't to end something but to begin it. A marriage, a family, a life built on the simple, radical notion that broken people could heal each other, that love could survive anything if you were brave enough to fight for it. The farmhouse settled around them like a warm blanket, its walls holding stories of pain and recovery, loss and discovery. Everything that had brought them to this moment. In the morning, Evelyn would start planning the company's next phase. Jack would fix the leak in the bathroom. Maddie would demand pancakes with too much syrup. But tonight, they were just 3 people who'd found each other against impossible odds, who'd chosen love over fear, who'd built something beautiful from the wreckage of their old lives. Sometimes love didn't arrive to rescue you, they'd learned. Sometimes it arrived to rebuild you. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, it arrived to remind you that your story wasn't over. It was just beginning. Outside, snow began to fall, the last snow of winter, soft and silent and full of promise. Inside, the Monroe Crosswell family sat together on their terrible couch, wrapped in Sarah's quilt, watching old movies and eating popcorn and being exactly what they'd always needed to be.